Now, Deputy Majority Leader in Parliament, Sarah Adwoa Safo, Asin Central MP, Kennedy Ohene Agyapong, and former MP for Navrongo Central, Mark Woyongo, have been listed among 50 worst MPs between 2012 and 2016. This is according to a report by civil organization Odikro that seeks to assess the performances of the members of parliament of the 6th Parliament. Lolan Sego Moses, the content manager of the organization, presented the findings.
Lastly, but perhaps most importantly for the voting public, we produced scorecards on all 275 MPs. So the methodology for our scorecard was very simple. We graded MPs based on the number of times they were present in Parliament and the number of statements they made in Parliament. And so we weighted attendance as the number of times MPs were present in Parliament at 40% and the number of statements MPs made in Parliament at 60%, because we believe that an MP who attends parliamentary sittings several times and makes no contributions should not be rewarded for that. An MP who makes several contributions and contributes to passing bills should be rewarded for doing that. And we found that Dr. Anthony Akutose he had, I think, the third highest number of contributions, statements on the floor of Parliament, and he also had a very high attendance rate. Now, that's not surprising at all. In fact, if you look at the top 10 or 20 MPs, you will find that most of them were members of the Finance Committee. Again, if you look at our earlier slides, we highlighted the number of tax bills that were passed by this Parliament. And so naturally, people on the Finance Committee, the chairman, he's a ranking member of the Finance Committee, will contribute more just because bills in their area are on the floor of Parliament and are being discussed more often. So he came first. I believe James Kluche-Afeji, who was the chairman of the Finance Committee, was ranked second, and then a number of the other leaders were in the top 10. The MP who was ranked last was Evans Paul Edu. Incidentally, he was the Western Regional Minister, if I'm not mistaken. And this trend is of ministers ranking last, especially because of absenteeism. You can see his absenteeism score. He was only present 112 times out of 393 parliamentary sittings. So he missed almost half of the sittings of Parliament. And we think that's very disappointing, because MPs only go to Parliament 4 days in a week. So MPs don't go to Parliament when Parliament is sitting on Monday. MPs are also given some time off Parliament to interact with their constituents. So a typical meeting, so a meeting of Parliament is any 3-month period when Parliament sits. It's roughly 3 months. And then MPs have about a month and a half off, and then they come back for another meeting. And I believe that provision is there to allow MPs to interact with their constituents. I believe that's also the reason why they're given Mondays off. So if you are from a constituency that is up north or a very far distance from Accra, you can travel and still make it in time for parliamentary sittings. Unfortunately, a lot of our ministers did not do that, and they absented.
Sego Moses there. Well, the report also identified members of Parliament who, over the past 4 years, didn't contribute to deliberations on the floor of the House.
19 MPs from 2013 to 2016 did not utter a single word on the floor of Parliament. Now, we find that very disappointing, especially since one of them was Deputy Chief Whip on the majority side. And so she was a leader and had preferential access to speech on the floor of Parliament, but didn't take advantage of it. And so naturally, we're curious, what were some of the reasons why MPs may or may not have spoken in Parliament? What factors affect an MP's speech in Parliament? If you focus just on the 19 silent MPs, you see that there was a clear partisan division, partisan bent. So the NDC, 16 NDC MPs did not speak and 3 MPP MPs did not speak. But if we focus just on the 19 silent MPs, we may not get to the real reasons why MPs may not contribute in Parliament. So we expanded our research and looked at all the MPs, what they said, and computed the average numbers of statements made by MPs from the various parties. If you look at the average numbers,
you could say that's an interesting report. Well, Member of Parliament for Whole West, Emmanuel Bedra, has been reacting to the findings. So he has commended the organization, but he's adding that it may not reflect the situation on the ground, not necessarily for him.
In other jurisdictions, we have this. So why not? Ghana, they are doing very well.
Shouldn't some constituents be worried about the fact that 19 MPs don't appear to have made a statement on the floor of the House for the past 4 years?
Well, if especially when you're a first timer, it's difficult for you to make statement. You need to grow through the process to be able to make statement. But I'm not holding brief for anybody who has not made statement. Statement on the floor of the House is not the only thing that we do. We have committee meetings. You contribute at the committee level. As for statement, just one out of it. You ask questions on the floor of the House, questions ministers, and also you also contribute at the committee level. So these are the things that they have to look at. It's not only about making statement. I also mentioned that there's one particular person who comes to the floor and talk. And that person has been marked 0, that he has not contributed. What about that too?
So it raises questions about data as a whole.
Exactly.
But then again, how about the possibility of seizing preference that is given to leadership of the House? Because the report suggests that it appears about 27 out of the 52 that contributed were mostly people who had leadership positions.
Exactly. If you look at the report, you notice that those who were rated 50 high are chairmen of committees, and they lead the report, they debate the report, they bring the report to the floor of the House. So they are giving preference to speak. And that's the rules of the House. We can't change unless we change our standing orders.
Well, at this point, we've got to do some sports, and Gary L. Smith is standing by with sports on the pause. Please stay with us.